had prevailed. In this victory, heaven remembered an eternal truth. Good always triumphs over evil. Not by force, not by violence, but because goodness is the very essence of God, a light that no darkness can extinguish. Pride, hatred, and ambition may fight fiercely, but they are fleeting shadows against the purity of love and faithfulness. The battle had ended, and heaven, though wounded, remained at peace. Michael's faith, the humility of his words, "Who is like God?" now echoed in every corner of the universe, an immovable and eternal truth, a reminder that God's glory is infinite, and that nothing, not even the brightest light, can surpass his love.
If you want to pass your challenge and get funded as soon as possible, then listen up. We will pass your challenge for you and help you get funded.
The expulsion and Lucifer's fate. After the final battle, heaven opened to cast out the rebels. Lucifer, once the morning star, along with his fallen followers, was hurled far from the light, dragged into an abyss of darkness and desolation. In the act of expulsion, heaven itself seemed to tremble. The angels who had been the most beautiful, the most powerful, those whose light rivaled the stars, fell like banished meteors, cast into the lower world, a place of chaos and shadow, a kind of eternal exile where God's glory could not be seen or felt. Lucifer, now transformed into Satan, felt the weight of the fall like a burning iron in his being. The total separation from God, from light and heavenly peace, was a wound deeper than any physical punishment could inflict. The underworld, where he was confined with his followers, wasn't yet the final hell, but a state of chaos and utter spiritual isolation, a place beyond peace and glory's reach. It was like a shattered dream, a dark reflection of heavenly order, a realm utterly cut off from holiness. For Satan, this expulsion meant the end of his original purpose. Yet, in his pride and rage, his hatred morphed into a new mission. If he couldn't attain God's glory, he'd destroy it wherever he found it. In this abyss of despair, his gaze turned towards creation, to the material world God had promised to make. In his twisted mind, a thought took shape. If he couldn't have heaven, he'd corrupt God's most precious work, humanity. The idea of seeing humans made in God's image dragged into darkness gave him bitter satisfaction. Humans were the ones who had stolen his place at God's throne. That love, that goodness with which they were created, would become the target of his hatred. His motivation was clear. If he and his fallen angels couldn't be in God's presence, then humans shouldn't deserve it either. This hatred and resentment transformed into a mission, a deep desire to sabotage the divine work and corrupt the purity of creation. Lucifer's expulsion and his army of fallen angels had then a direct consequence on the balance of good and evil in the world. From that moment, evil began to exist not just as an absence of goodness, but as an active and organized force. The demons, led by Satan, began to seek ways to exert their influence over the material world, to corrupt humans, to incite pride, envy, and despair, the very feelings that had led to their own downfall. God, in his love and justice, had allowed this separation. The expulsion was not just a punishment, but an act of divine justice. The angels who had chosen rebellion, who had rejected God's love and holiness, could no longer dwell in his presence. God's love was always there, but his justice demanded balance. Those who had decided to reject the light could not continue to bask in it. In this act, the equilibrium between God's love and justice was perfectly manifested. Justice required separation, and love still granted the fallen ones the freedom to exist, albeit in a darkness of their own choosing. The story of Lucifer, now Satan, does not end with his expulsion, but rather extends into the relationship between good and evil in the world today. His fall, his hatred, his desire to corrupt humanity remain present in every temptation, in every spiritual battle that humans face. Evil seeks to infiltrate the human heart, its freedom, its desire for greatness. But this influence is limited, and good, which comes from God, always has the final say. The battle between good and evil that began in heaven continues on earth, in the hearts of human beings. Satan and his demons seek to darken the light of every soul, but God's grace, love, and justice are always present, reminding us that although evil may be human beings, Satan and his demons seek to darken the light of every soul, but God's grace, love, and justice are always present, reminding us that although evil may be loud and defiant, good will always triumph. Lucifer's fall became the beginning of an eternal conflict, a reminder that ultimately goodness, light, and divine love are invincible. As in heaven, on earth too, Michael's question will always resonate. Who is like God? Lucifer's influence in the world. Since his expulsion, Lucifer, now Satan, has pursued a single purpose: to corrupt the creation he once inhabited. The Bible recounts various episodes where Satan appears as the tempter, challenging not only mere mortals, but also key figures in the history of faith. The most symbolic moment is found in the New Testament, when Satan attempts to tempt Jesus in the desert. After 40 days and 40 nights of fasting, Jesus is confronted by Satan, who offers him temptations of power, food, and glory. Satan says, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Then he takes Jesus to the pinnacle of the temple and suggests that he throw himself down so that angels will protect him and thus demonstrate his power. Finally, he offers Jesus all the kingdoms of the world in exchange for worship, revealing his ultimate intention: to usurp the worship that belongs to God alone. Jesus' response to each temptation demonstrates his spiritual strength and complete trust in the Father. Jesus firmly rejects each proposal, quoting Scripture and reaffirming the truth that power and glory belong to God alone. This episode, more than a mere confrontation, exemplifies how faith and humility can withstand even the most alluring temptations. Jesus demonstrates that true power lies not in miracles or wealth, but in obedience and love for God. Most alluring temptations. Jesus demonstrates that true power lies not in miracles or wealth, but in obedience and love for God. Another tale of temptation is the testing of Job. In the book of Job, Satan appears before God and, with a mix of arrogance and defiance, hurls an accusation: "Does Job fear God for nothing?" In that moment, Satan not only challenges Job's faithfulness, but attempts to question the very goodness of faith itself. He implies that Job's love is superficial, a loyalty bought with blessings. His challenge is an affront to the nature of love and faith, suggesting that no one, not even the most righteous man, can remain faithful amid suffering. Job's story reveals Satan's capacity to try and destroy faith at its core, inflicting pain and despair. However, Job's response, though filled with anguish and doubt, is a lesson in spiritual strength. In his endurance, Job proves that faith is not merely a response to blessings, but a deep-rooted loyalty that persists even in the face of extreme suffering. Satan fails, and Job's faith becomes an eternal testament to resisting evil and trusting in God. Moreover, his first major act after being cast out was in the Garden of Eden, the place where God, with his infinite love, had set the stage for human history. In that perfect garden, Lucifer saw a chance to strip the innocence from the first humans, Adam and Eve, and turn them into the first victims of his rebellion against the Creator. Taking the form of a serpent, a symbol of cunning and betrayal, he approached Eve with words dripping with seduction and doubt. Did God really say, "You must not eat from any tree in the garden"? He began with a question, planting the seed of suspicion. His technique wasn't overwhelming force, but a whisper that, like poison, invaded Eve's heart. Lucifer knew how to transform a simple desire into an irresistible need, how to turn doubt into action. You will be like God, knowing good and evil. This promise sealed humanity's fate. Adam and Eve, tempted by the possibility of being more, of achieving divinity without obeying their Creator, fell, and with them, the world fell into the shadow of sin. Lucifer, with a single temptation, achieved what he had planned from the abyss: to separate creation from its Creator, to bring the celestial conflict into the human heart. Lucifer's influence hasn't vanished. His presence remains a constant conflict in human life. Each temptation, each moment of doubt, echoes that first choice in Eden and the challenges faced by Job and Jesus. Evil acts as an echo of that primordial rebellion, a voice trying to separate us from the source of goodness. However, in every biblical episode, in every story of resistance, we're reminded that good has the final word, that faith and love are the answers to hatred and despair.
You never get any loans. You don't need to buy, fix up, and...
Lucifer's role in Revelation. In the Bible's final book, Revelation, Satan's ultimate fate and role in the end times are unveiled. This tale, brimming with striking imagery and prophecies, portrays Satan, the great dragon, as humanity's and God's ultimate foe, determined to corrupt creation until the very end. John, Revelation's author, describes a vision of the last days, an era when evil seems to have reached its zenith and the battle between light and darkness intensifies like never before. Revelation presents Satan as the great dragon, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. The same Lucifer, who was once the morning star, has now taken the form of a fierce dragon, a creature symbolizing not only evil, but also the destructive and deceptive power he has wielded since his fall. This ancient serpent is the same one who brought the first sin to humanity in Eden, and now, at the end of time, seeks to destroy all remaining goodness and light in the world. Revelation describes a time of tribulation, a period of catastrophes and trials where humanity is divided between those who follow God and those who succumb to evil.